Hey everybody, and happy Friday. This is April 24th, and this is for Math 1. We're going to look at solving absolute value inequalities for and. So we looked a little bit yesterday already at absolute value inequalities. We're going to go a little bit more in detail with our solving. Today we're only going to look at absolute value inequalities that are ands, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Remember that ands are when it gets shaded in the middle, where they're both true. Okay. All right, so let's look at our first example here and see what we can do, okay? So remember what we talked about yesterday, that the first thing we want to do is we want to change it to an equal sign, just like we do with inequalities, pretend that it's equals, right? Copy it down exactly the way it is, okay? Then remember the absolute value means that the distance from 0 is 5, okay? But I want to know if the distance from 0 is 5, what are my two possible answers? Well, it could be that x plus 3 could equal a positive 5. That's 5 away from 0. Or it could be that x plus 3 could equal a negative 5. That's also 5 away from 0. Okay? So then I'm going to solve them separately like normal. Draw my line down my equal sign. So there's a 3 on the same side as the x, and it's being added. The opposite of addition is subtraction, so I'm going to subtract 3 to both sides. So 3 minus 3 is 0, and I get x equals 2. Come over here, draw my line down my equal sign. There's a 3 on the side with the x, and it's being added. The opposite of adding is subtracting 3 to both sides. So 3 minus 3 is 0, bring down the x, and x equals negative 8. So there are my two solutions. So I'm going to put those on my graph like we talked about yesterday. Notice that it has an equal to, so they're going to be closed circles, okay? So on positive 2, I'm going to make a closed circle, and on negative 8, I'm going to make a closed circle, okay? Because it says equal to right there. There's a line on the bottom. Okay, now we're going to test the regions like we did before to try to see which regions are true, okay? So I'm going to pick a point to test over here. So maybe I'll just pick negative 10 because 10s are easy to multiply and add. Here I'll pick 0 because 0 is always easy. And then here I'll just pick 3 because that's the smallest number. Doesn't matter. Any number from each one of them is fine. I'm going to substitute that into the original inequality up here, okay? So I have absolute value, and then instead of writing x, I'm going to put in the negative 10 plus 3 is less than or equal to 5. So I'm copying this exact same thing. Okay, so negative 10 plus 3 is negative 7. And the absolute value of negative 7 means the distance from 0. So here's negative 7. Negative 7 is 7 spaces away from 0. Okay, so is 7 less than or equal to 5? No, it is not. So I'm not going to shade on that part. Okay, so now I'm going to test the other side here with the 0. Same thing, putting the 0 in for the x right there. Okay, so absolute value 0 plus 3 less than or equal to 5. Okay, so 0 plus 3 is 0. I'm so sorry. 0 plus 3 is 3. I don't know why I said 0. Less than or equal to 5. And the absolute value of 3 is the distance from 0. So 3 to 0 is 3 spaces. So is 3 less than or equal to 5? Yes, it is. So I want to shade right there in the middle between those two. Okay. And then I'll test that last one, positive 3, put that in for x here. So absolute value of 3 plus 3, less than or equal to 5. 3 plus 3 is 6. Distance of 6 from 0. 6 would be over here, and it's 6 spaces away from 0. Is 6 less than or equal to 5? No, it is not. So I don't want to shade there. Okay, so we're going to write our final answer here. That's always important to write your final answer. Don't forget about that. I'm going to write it right next to my graph so you can see it. Our answers are in between. So remember, when it's in between, I'm going to put the x in the middle. And then I'm going to put less than signs on both sides. And since this one has an equal to, I'm going to put them both as equals. And then negative 8 is a smaller number, so that goes on this side. and 2 is the bigger number, so that goes on this side. There's my final answer. Okay. Now, I do want to point out something to you that we talked about yesterday. This means the distance from 0 is less than 5. So if my distance from 0 is less than 5, then that means that it has to be in between. You know it because it has to be less than 5, not greater. Greater would be on the outside. So the less than symbol is what makes it be shaded in the middle here. Okay? That you can use that trick to help you kind of get out of some of this work later on. Okay? All right, let's do one more example just to make sure that we're okay. Same thing. Okay? Same thing here. So I'm going to start by pretending it's an equal sign. That's always the first step. And then the distance is 1, so that means it could be at -1 or +1. So 2x minus 3 could equal +1, or 2x plus 3 equals -1. I think I said minus, but it's a positive, sorry. Okay, so now I need to get x by itself, so draw my line down my equal sign like usual. There's a 2 and a 3 on the same side as the x, but the 3 is farther, so I'm starting there, and it's being added. So the opposite of adding 3 is subtracting 3 to both sides. 3 minus 3 is 0. Bring down the 2x. 1 minus 3 is -2. Now there's just a 2 on the same side as the x, and it's being multiplied. There's multiplication right there. So I'm going to divide, because that's the opposite. Divide by 2 to both sides. 2 divided by 2 here becomes 1, so I could just bring down the x. -2 divided by 2 is -1. Same over here. Draw my line down my equal sign. Start by getting rid of the 3, just like I did on the other side. It's always going to be the same steps. 3 minus 3 is 0. Bring down the 2x. -1 minus 3 is -4. Divide by 2 because it's multiplying. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Bring down the x. -4 divided by 2 is -2. Now look at the original. This one is not equal to, there's not a line on the bottom, so we're going to make an open circle at these two numbers. So -1, open circle, -2, open circle. Okay, and I'm going to test my regions, okay? So I'm going to pick a point from over here. I'll just go with -3 because it's the smallest. Pick a point here. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to be in between, so I'll just go with -1.5. And pick a point from over here. I'm going to go with 0 because 0 is an easy number to deal with. I'm going to check that, okay? So I'm going to plug that into my original up here. So I have absolute value of 2 times -3 plus 3 less than 1. So 2 times -3 is -6. -6 plus 3 is -3. And the distance from -3 to 0 is 3. Is 3 less than 1? No, it's not. So I'm not going to shade there. Then I'll try with the 1.5. So absolute value of 2 times -1.5 plus 3 less than 1. 2 times -1.5 is -3. -3 plus 3 is 0. And the distance from 0 to 0 is still 0. 0 is less than 1. So I do want to shade in between there. And then last one, I'm going to check the 0. So absolute value of 2 times 0 plus 3 less than 1. 2 times 0 is 0. So I just have absolute value of 3. The distance from 3 to 0 is just 3. Is 3 less than 1? No, it is not. So I don't want to shade over there. So our answer comes out in between. So we're going to write our final answer again. X goes in the middle, less than, less than. There's no equal to this time, so don't put equal to. Smaller number is -2. Bigger number is -1. There's my final answer. Which, like I just talked about up there, we knew it was going to be in between because it says the distance, absolute value, the distance is less than 1. So we know it has to be in between. So whenever we have that distance being less than 1, whenever an absolute value is less than 1, you know that shading is going to be in between. So you're also allowed to use that shortcut to help you as well. Okay. All right. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Remind Google Classroom, email, whatever you need. Have a great day, guys.